find your seat, please. I will call the regular meeting of the Oak Ridge City Council for April to order. We are glad that you are with us tonight in the audience and those who are watching on TV or streaming online. Our invocation tonight is going to be led by Rabbi Lowenthal of the Jewish Congregation of Oak Ridge. Our Pledge of Allegiance will then be followed and led by Paul Frezza, who is a fourth grader at Glenwood School. So would everyone please stand?
With admiration for the principled conduct of our city council members, I share these words from Psalm 15. As you follow the godly path described in this psalm, you will never falter. Psalm 15, a psalm of David. God, who can dwell in your tent? Who can live on your holy mountain? The one who walks in innocence and does what is right and speaks truth from the heart. The one who doesn't spread slander, who doesn't do evil to a friend, who doesn't disgrace a relative. The one who is repelled by mean, nasty people, but respects those who respect. The one who pledges more than what is easy and holds to that commitment. The one who doesn't seek interest on a loan, the one who can't be bribed to speak against the innocent, the one who acts in these ways will never falter.
Paul?
Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Pro Tem Dotson.
Here.
Councilmember Gleason.
Here.
Mayor Gooch.
Here.
Councilmember Hammond. Here. Councilmember Hensley.
Here.
Councilmember Hope.
Here.
Councilmember Smith. Here.
We have a full complement back tonight. We're glad to have Councilman Hammond back with us. I'm going to call Paul Preza back up to the podium, and he's going to read for us his poem that he recited at the annual Arbor Day, which was held last Friday at Glenwood School. So, Paul, please come forward again.
Tree planting day. What do we plant when we plant the tree? We plant the ship which will cross the sea. We plant the masts to carry the sails. We plant the planks to withstand the gales. The keel, the keelson, the beam, the knee. We plant the ship when we plant the tree. What do we plant when we plant the tree? We plant the house for you and me. We plant the rafters, the shingles, the floors. We plant the studding, the lasts, the doors. The beams, the siding, all parts that be. We plant the house when we plant the tree. What do we plant when we plant the tree? We plant our love and our loyalty. We plant our devotion and our memories dear that grow still more precious with each rolling year. We plant our glad hopes that flourish so free. We plant them all when we plant the tree. For what do we plant when we plant the tree? We plant the students the future shall see. We plant the crown that our campus will wear. We plant the robe for our foliage fair. We plant the glory that is to be. We plant for all days when we plant the tree.
Next item of business, Madam Clerk.
Our next item is the recognition of Oak Ridge High School senior Sophie Sluss. Sophie, would you come up? She is, like I said, a high school senior, and she did our pledge here a couple months ago, and she has been the recipient of the Governor's Volunteer Star Award for Anderson County. So she won the award for all of Anderson County, and we just wanted to recognize her tonight and honor her in front of City Council. So.
Congratulations. Next up, public recognition, Madam Clerk.
We have recognition of the Youth Advisory Board for organizing the first annual Art in the Park event on March 30th.
Mr. Dawson.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on this. First and foremost, we really appreciate the Youth Advisory Board taking it upon themselves to organize the Art in the Park event. It was a very big success. We had a lot of people in attendance, and also we had a lot of artists, not just visual artists, but also instrumental artists. So you'll see a mural that actually some of the artists there that were on the Youth Advisory Board created, and along with their sponsors, which we really appreciate. You can see them working here, and that was on the stage. And you can see some individual portraits done in the styles of different artists. And that's the group. So I'm really proud to be a representative and working with City Council and the Youth Advisory Board. They do an excellent job in our community. They're our young leaders, and we want to keep them in Oak Ridge as long as we can. So thank you all so much. And I'm going to point to some of the Youth Advisory. Come on up just real quick. This is Stella Scott, and she's one of the members. You want to say anything, Stella?
That's all right.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here, and I appreciate everything that you did. Yeah. Thank you, Janice.
Next item of business, Madam Clerk.
We have a proclamation designating May 5th, 2024 as Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. And I'm going to ask Mr. Hensley to present the proclamation. Here to receive it, Steve Reddick, Dorothy Devan, and Rabbi Lowenthal, I believe, are here. Rabbi, would you like to say a word, or Steve?
A few comments. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Gooch. I'm here tonight representing Ronnie Bogart, who could not be with us this evening. She is our guiding light in this exercise. But first, just speaking on behalf of Ronnie and other people involved in Holocaust education, I'd like to thank the City Council and the City of Oak Ridge for acknowledging and recognizing the importance of Holocaust remembrance and awareness and education. As you know, we live in a time of deep social divisiveness and worsening anti-Semitism, and also increasing distance from the Holocaust time-wise. As more Holocaust survivors die each day, it's more important now than ever that we carry this memory forward for them. In the final paragraph of her Holocaust memoir, Echoes from the Holocaust, Oak Ridge Holocaust survivor Mira Kimmelman wrote, "The Holocaust is a lesson in human and inhumane history that took place because of hatred, bigotry, and indifference. These traits spread like wildfire. If we remain indifferent to human suffering, it can happen again. It can happen here, and who knows who the next victims will be. Only by remembering the bitter lesson of Hitler's legacy can we hope it will never be repeated. Teach it, tell it, and read it." And I'd like to thank you again and thank the citizens of Oak Ridge, and also those who are working diligently to keep her wards alive in this town, especially those in the Oak Ridge schools who are bringing this subject to the young people who really form the hope and backbone of our future. Teachers such as Julie Kinder McMillan and Sandra Burnett at Robertsville Middle School. Dr. Sheila Morton at Oak Ridge High School is teaching the Holocaust semester class for the first time this semester. And the teachers and students at Oracle who make up the Mira Kimmelman Holocaust Education Study Group each year. In closing, I'd like to invite you as council members and all the citizens of Oak Ridge to the Holocaust Remembrance Service that will be held Sunday, May the 5th at 3 p.m. at the Jewish Congregation of Oak Ridge. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Mr. Reddy.
Thank you.
Next item of business, Madam Clerk.
We have a proclamation designating April 2024 as Child Abuse Prevention Month.
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. And it is approved. And here to accept the proclamation is Keisha Waters, Executive Director of CASA, and Mr. Gleason is going to present the proclamation.
Thank you to the Oak Ridge City Council for this important proclamation. I think it's so important that we have awareness and recognition for the month of April as Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month. Our mission with CASA is to advocate for abused and neglected children. And we not only focus on this in the month of April, but throughout the entire year. And so this proclamation allows us to really share with the Oak Ridge City Council and the citizens how important it is that all of us are aware of the importance of being mandated reporters of suspected child abuse, and also the fact that we need court-appointed special advocates to advocate on behalf of these children that need us the most. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Next proclamation, Madam Clerk.
A proclamation honoring Dr. Shirley Raines as the recipient of the 2024 Emory Valley Center Compassion Award.
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. And we're honored to have Dr. Raines with us tonight, along with Aaron Price from the Emory Valley Center. And if they would come forward, please. City. I want to thank you for everything that you've done in your career, not only as an educator, but as a citizen of Oak Ridge. And people may have forgotten, she served at our request as the chairman of the preschool selection site committee. And if you've not had an opportunity to visit the school, you should. It is a true treasure for this city. And Dr. Raines is a true treasure for this city. And on behalf of our citizens, we thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And if you'd like to say something.
Did you get a picture? All right. Okay. Mr. Price, who is our foundation director, and I want to thank you for this proclamation. And since it's for me, I also should say that serving on that committee was also Ms. Smith. And we learned a lot. I learned a lot about the functioning of Oak Ridge City Schools and the functioning of the City Council and the needs and wants of the committee and of the citizens. And so thank you for this proclamation. I moved here from Memphis so that I could be in this city because I already knew this is where I wanted to be.
And we are so glad you did. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Next proclamation, Madam Clerk.
A proclamation designating May 3rd through 7th, 2024 as Improved Benevolent Protective Order of the Elks of the World Week.
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. And I believe Ms. Rose Weaver is here to accept the proclamation, as well as some other folks.
We have Mr. Roger Williamson, who is the exalted ruler, he is the president of the Elks. He will come forward, and then we have Ms. Deborah. Ms. Tina is here, okay.
Anybody else, folks?
Those are the two key people.
Well, I am honored to present this to you on behalf of the city of Oak Ridge. We're going to get a little picture now. Would you like to say a few words?
So during that week of the Elks Week, everybody really don't know what the Elks is all about, but we are a charitable organization. And during that week, we'll be giving out a lot of donations to different charities. We do special people, battered women, and we also will be doing a kidney donation, and we also will recognize certain people in the community. So we will have things open to the public, and so hopefully we'll have that up where you can see where you can come and join us, but we'd be more than happy to have you.
As she said, we'd love to have the mayor, and the congressmen, councilmen, and councilwomen there on opening day to welcome all the travelers coming into town. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next proclamation, Madam Clerk.
A proclamation designating April 7th through 13th as National Library Week.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. And Mr. Hope is going to present the proclamation. Ms. Faulkner's here. Yes, she is. Thank you.
How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Really? So, real quick, 100,000+ visitors last year, 33,868 questions answered. Where else can we find information like that? 33,000 questions. Wow. Great job there. My staff did a great job there. My mom didn't pay me a bit.
Julie?
I just want to take a quick second to tell you that the state of your library is thriving. We are seeing increased participation across all sectors. We are increased library cards, increased attendance, increased circulation. So we're very, very glad to be here. Thank you for all your support, even when it's not paid for. On a more somber note, a very beloved library employee passed away Friday evening, so I wanted to dedicate this National Library Week and this proclamation to the Marth family in memory of Wanda Marth. She worked for the library for 21 years. She was a mother and a grandmother to many of us, and even after she retired, she still made sure that all library employees' children had Christmas presents. So, for the Marth family and for Wanda, thank you for your support.
Thank you. There are no special reports. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Next item is the consent agenda.
Move for approval.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? There are none.
Okay. No, that was going to happen.
Next item of business, Madam Clerk.
Under public hearings and first reading of ordinances, you have an ordinance to submit a change to the city charter to the qualified voters in accordance with Article 11, Section 9 of the Tennessee Constitution as a home rule municipality, to amend City Charter Article 1 titled Elections, to amend Section 4 titled Nonpartisan City Elections, to add language regarding statutory compliance.
Moved and seconded. Ms. Rackard?
Yes, sir. This is The one item that came out of your charter review committee, they have now fulfilled their purpose and reviewed the charter to see if there's anything that needed to be amended for statutory compliance. This is the one proposed item that they wanted to submit forward to City Council for consideration, and that is to change Article 1, Section 4 in relation to city elections. Our charter says that all city elections are nonpartisan. That does include the school board members. With the state law change that was done a few years ago, that does allow those to be partisan. We added some proposed language in there for you to consider, and that way, the way that it's worded, is just to add unless state law requires otherwise, and that way if the state statute makes any other change in the future, be it to expand that or to reduce it back, we would still be in compliance.
Any questions for Ms. Racker? Seeing none, we're on the board. The vote is to approve on first reading. Beth, I can't. No. So I vote. Hang on just a second. There it came. Okay. Ayes 7, no nays, and the ordinance is adopted on first reading. Next item of business, Madam Clerk.
An ordinance to amend ordinance number 2 titled the zoning ordinance of the city of Oak Ridge, Tennessee by amending the zoning map, which is made a part of the ordinance, by changing the zoning district of vacant land off South Dillard and Carver Avenues, Anderson County Control Map 105F, Group C, parcel 035.00, and a portion of map 105F, Group C, parcel 006.00, containing approximately 11 acres, from R2 PUD, low-density residential district, with a planned unit development overlay, and B1 neighborhood business district to R4 BPUD, high-density residential district, with a planned unit development overlay. And the official public hearing will happen on second reading.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. The second reading will be in May.
May 13th.
May 13th. All right. So it's been moved and seconded. Mr. Blasius, you're recognized.
Mayor and Council, this is first reading of a planned unit development request for the Scarborough neighborhood for an affordable housing project. It was approved by Planning Commission. Because PUDs are a little bit more complicated and in-depth than our regular zonings, I asked Jennifer Williams from our staff to just expand a little bit further, including the process of how it moves forward.
So as stated, this rezoning request is for the piece of property you can see on the screen. It's about 11 acres behind the Scarborough Community Center and also behind the homes on Wilberforce, South Dillard, and South Benedict Avenues. As the ordinance stated, the request is for a rezoning to R4B multifamily residential district with a PUD overlay. So in a typical rezoning, the zoning district is adopted and the property can be developed in any way that's allowed under that district. But a PUD, which is the request before you tonight, is slightly different in that the developer is required to submit with their rezoning request a plan showing what they're going to develop on the property. So the city gets the benefit of knowing what's going to be developed there and influencing the development process a little bit more than normal. And the developer gets the benefit of requesting for flexibility in some of the city code items like parking or density or setbacks. So the plan that's required to be submitted as part of the PUD is called a preliminary master plan. That was included in your packet, and I think it's the next drawing down in the packet, if we can possibly show that on the screen. So we can talk a little bit about what the development is. It is the PUD preliminary master plan attachment. while that's getting pulled up, I'll just say that what you will see on the screen is a development with a variety of housing types. It is the attachment called PUD Preliminary Master Plan. There we go. All right, that's it. So this is the PUD Preliminary Master Plan drawing. That's part of what is being considered tonight on first reading. What you see is a development with multiple housing types. There are 114 dwelling units total, divided into 3 housing types. The first are 66 multifamily garden-style apartment units, which are in the 3 sort of lighter orange buildings toward the center of the development site. The second housing type are 38 attached townhomes, which are the yellow buildings, sort of in the rear of the property behind the homes on South Dillard and South Benedict. So those 2 housing types, the multifamily and the attached townhomes, are shown as a phase 1. Phase 2, closest to the Scarborough Community Center, are 10 single-family dwellings, which will be on their own lots. And whereas the apartments and townhomes would be rental property, the 10 single-family dwellings would be for home ownership. And as I believed, Wayne mentioned, another element of this project is that the intention is for those housing units to be classified as affordable housing. So also included in this drawing are other parts of the development, like open space. You can see where streets and sidewalks are proposed. You can see parking areas and landscaping. The council memo you received goes into a lot more detail about those things, and I can try to answer any questions about it. But lastly, before I finish, I'll just add that, as Wayne mentioned, any rezoning request or PUD request requires a recommendation from the city's planning commission. The planning commission reviewed this project at their meeting last month, and by a vote of 8-1, recommended conditional approval. There was one condition recommended by the planning commission, and it was that this project be studied by the city's Traffic Safety Advisory Board, or TSAB. As of right now, the project is scheduled to go to TSAB at their meeting 1 week from today, on April 15th. So that meeting will take place before a second reading of council. That's all I have. I can try to answer any questions.
All right, questions for staff. Ms. Smith.
Yeah, I've heard citizens express concern about the density of this development, and I just interested to know how the density of this would compare to some other recent developments in town. People get an idea of what it would be like.
I provided some information about that to the Planning Commission, so I have it for you here. We have, as I mentioned, 114 units over 11 acres, so that totals out to just under 10.5 units per acre in this proposed development. And for a multifamily development, that is relatively low. For comparison's sake, the Main Street Lofts, the most recent apartment complex constructed here, is just over 22 units an acre. Bristol Park Apartments is just over 18 units an acre. Slightly less dense example, the Summit Townhomes, recently constructed on the summit there, is about 11.2 units per acre. So all of those are more dense than what's proposed here.
Thanks.
Councilman Hammond.
Right, and I was just going to note that, and this is more so just in the spirit of integrity with regards to Margaret Jones and family. They're homeowners that are right there that have just reached out. They're the ones who submitted the letter, and my commitment to them was that I know we got it and we're aware, but I would actually put those concerns out. I know density was one of them. With the commitment of between this reading and the second reading, making sure those concerns are spoken to. And so the density was one of them, but we'll package what you've shared and create that as a response. The other one was other properties considered. Hey, you know, we heard about this and it's here. Did you all consider some other properties? And then the access road off Dillard and traffic safety implications and concerns associated with that. road being off of Dillard. And I know there was quite a bit of conversation in the community, the community input sessions that we had. And so I wanted to publicly note those were at least 3 that I know they had communicated. And so between now and the second reading, really in the spirit of integrity, I'll make sure that those are spoken to.
Mr. Dawson?
Yes, Ms. Williams, and I think Councilman Hammond just brought this up with regards to the Traffic Safety Advisory Board study. That is actually looking at Dillard Street, is that correct? The second entrance or exit?
I believe so. One of the items requested by the Planning Commission was for TSAP to look at those access points.
Okay. And I think a question I asked during Planning Commission is, are we required to have 2 entrances and exits to this development?
I believe that was the fire department's recommendation, was that for emergency services, 2
And the
exits
answer
are
is
important.
yes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure.
Other questions by staff? For staff? All right. This is on first reading. In May, we will have the public hearing on this matter as well as a vote on second reading. Ms. Smith?
Yeah, I think there might be some citizens here who want to talk about it, so.
Okay. All right. So any citizen wishing to speak on this specific topic? If not, you certainly have the opportunity to do it next month at the public hearing. Sir, are you? Okay, that's fine. That's fine. All right. Okay. All right. Anyone else? Seeing none then. Mr. Hensley?
Yes, I'd like to point out, too, and I see representative of the Housing Authority here, this is a joint project with the Housing Authority. And to me, it's well laid out. There's lots of open space, and so to me, it's pretty pleasing. Thank you very much.
All right. The motion is to approve on first reading. We're on the board. Ayes 7, no nays, and the ordinance is approved on first reading. Second reading will be in May along with the public hearing. Next item of business, Madam Clerk.
An ordinance accepting certain infrastructure at the preserve at Clinch River, formerly Rarity Ridge, in sub-area L for perpetual maintenance by the city.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Blasius?
Sorry, Mayor. Excuse me. I thought that
Okay, all right.
Public Works
Okay, I'm sorry.
would be up.
Okay.
It goes through the Planning Commission, but it's actually a
Got
Public
it.
Works
All right.
issue.
All right, Brian. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so this is a section of roadway of Rarity Ridge Parkway that's in front of the clubhouse. Over the years, I guess at one point it was listed for future right-of-way, and it seems to have gotten left out of getting accepted as final right-of-way. And so the developer has requested to do some other re-subdivision works for the commercial property, and as part of that, we asked him to go ahead and plat the right-of-way at this point so we could accept that roughly 500 feet of roadway and a little bit of storm drainage as public right-of-way. I guess that's all I have without any other questions.
Okay. Any question for Mr. Mills? Ms. Smith?
I'm a bit confused. Typically, we've accepted right-of-way after the improvements were made, so that there was an accepted plan before the improvements were made, and then after they were made and inspected was when we'd accept the right-of-way. I'm just trying to understand why this is different.
Yeah, Yeah, and it's a little bit before my time. This happened back in 2004 when the original development was platted, and at that time it was listed as future right-of-way. And for some reason, it got overlooked, and it never came to the commission to accept that section of right-of-way once the road was constructed. It was part of an existing road that was there, so there wasn't much improvements or a building of a new road. It was an existing road. Now, several years ago when we accepted Phase 7 or Section K, at that time the developer had overlaid and paved that entire stretch of roadway from the city limits all the way to Broadberry Avenue. And at that time we had a 1-year warranty bond on it, and we were trying to work with the developer to get that right-of-way platted, but we ran into some complications and haven't been able to do that until this time.
So the improvements we're asked to accept have all been made? Is that?
Yeah, they were made, and the road was overlaid a few years ago, and a 1-year warranty bond was put up at that time when that developer did that work. And so that's why I guess we're requesting also that a 1-year warranty maintenance agreement is not needed at this time because it was done a few years ago when we accepted all that, or when they had done the improvements to that roadway.
Thanks.
Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, the motion is to approve, and we're on the board. Ayes 7, no nays, and it is adopted on first reading. Next item, business, Madam Clerk.
Under final adoption of ordinances, you have an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances, City of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, Title 5, titled Municipal Finance and Taxation, to amend Chapter 3, no title, Chapter 4, titled Contracts and Purchases, and Chapter 5, titled Management of City Property, by reorganizing the provisions for better clarity, revising the provisions to add statutory exemptions, and to raise the city manager's contract authority, as well as the sealed competitive bid and advertising limit to $50,000.
Moved and seconded. Ms. Rackard?
Yes, so this item was approved on first reading. There were a few questions that were asked, particularly by Councilwoman Smith. So there is a substitute ordinance in your packet. If you'd like to move to put that on the floor, it is addressed in the bolded language that was added to the memo, but essentially it should address the concerns about sole source and the documentations for sole source purchases. And what we currently do, if a staff member has a question about whether that item truly is a sole source, they either ask finance or they ask me. So what we put in there was that if the purchasing officer had any questions about the documentation of a sole source, that it would be sent to my office for review and to give an opinion. And I ran that language by Ms. Smith prior to placing it in the packet, and she was acceptable to that change.
I move that we substitute the revised ordinance as described by City Attorney Ricard.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments about that? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All right, so we are back on the ordinance as amended, or the substitute ordinance, rather. All right. Additional questions or comments by council or questions for staff? Seeing none, we're on the board. Ayes 7, no nays, and the ordinance is adopted on second reading. Next item of business, Madam Clerk.
Under resolutions, you have a resolution approving the purchase of 3 fire engines for the fire department from Siddons Martin Emergency Group, LLC, Memphis, Tennessee, through the Sourcewell Purchasing Cooperative in a total amount not to exceed $3,665,915.
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. Chief Solomon.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Item before you tonight is the purchase of 3 fire engines. Our current fleet that's on the road today are 2014s. They're already, 10 years old. So this will be a replacement of our frontline engines. Our reserve engines are 1998 models. So the new engines, if approved tonight, we would not take delivery of those until about 41 months from the date of the order. So we're trying to get in front of this lead time as well. So at that time.
So 3.5-year lead time.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. During the process last year, we went through the process of, when we was doing the tower truck, identifying what product or what manufacturer we would choose, and we went with Pierce Manufacturing because of the safety aspects. And also another aspect is they have a actual service center in the Knoxville area, so they'll be able to provide warranty work. And I'm able to take questions if y'all have any.
And the payment for these fire engines would be made upon delivery, correct?
That is correct. We will not, we'll just sign the contract, and then as far as payment, we'll pay for them when they get here.
All right. Questions for Chief Solomon? Mr. Hope?
Does lock us in, once we sign contract, it does lock us in on that price, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we're on the board. Ayes 7, no nays. The resolution is adopted. Thank you, Chief. Next resolution, Madam Clerk.
A resolution authorizing a contract with SE Diving Services, LLC, Greenville, South Carolina, for the inspection and cleaning of the water intake structure in an amount not to exceed $50,000.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Berg, after following the chief of $3 million, you are a bargain, sir. That is correct.
Yes, I would also like to make clear that we're hoping this is less than $20,000, but
Okay.
When we had the interior structure at the water intake examined, we inspected it. There we go, that's the word. When we had the interior structure inspected at the water intake, what we discovered was some debris in front of the intake structure. This was outside of the intake structure, which made it fell outside the scope of the water plant construction contract. We spoke with the diving team that did the initial inspection. They've agreed to come back, inspect the outside, and basically clear that debris away from the front of the intake. We're hoping that that's going to take 1 to 2 days of work, and if that ends up being the case, this will be $20,000 to $30,000. But we've put in a contingency so that we could keep them here up to a week to do a full cleaning of the site.
Questions for Mr. Berg?
I just have a real quick question, Mayor. How deep is this area where they're diving?
I don't know off the top of my head. I know we get at least 60 feet deep at our intake. And
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hensley?
Yeah, it's the intake to the water plant, right? That's the big concrete structure on the lake. You're going to clean the grates, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. It's not really that big, but it's deep.
Yes. And it's our only intake.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Berg? Seeing none, the motion is to approve on the board. Ayes 7, no nays, and the resolution is approved. Next resolution, Madam Clerk.
A resolution authorizing a professional services agreement with Arcadis, Knoxville, Tennessee, for the creation of a master plan for the redevelopment of the Oak Ridge Civic Center Plaza in an amount not to exceed $32,000.
So move.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Hedrick?
Yes, this is a project that would take care of much-needed maintenance on the Civic Center Plaza. The aging concrete and lighting infrastructure is overdue for repair and replacement. It also provides us an opportunity to reimagine that space as we build a new conference center and we look at how that space serves the library, the rec center, and the conference center, and Bissell Park in general. We have a much larger residential population in that area now, and we'll have conference center activities, and we feel that this is a great opportunity to create a much more engaging and useful space for the community. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I also have Cliff Brooks here from Arcadis to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Hedrick? Mr. Mr. Gleason.
John, would you mind going into public engagement on this project?
Yeah, the proposal includes 2 public engagement meetings. Those, depending on weather, we would likely try to do those either on the plaza or inside the rec center nearby, so that we could engage the public, get their input on what they would like to see. We are currently doing a project with some UT civil engineering students, and they're looking at it from an academic standpoint for a class project, a senior class project, and we've done a couple of small public engagement processes there. This one would be a little more robust. This is more of a real project, and we really want to have public input on how that space can be used. Having observed that space for a couple of decades now, I find that with the use that we see in Bissell Park and the facilities around that area, you don't see that kind of use of that actual plaza space right now, and I think we could make it a much more engaging space, and we need the public's input to make that happen.
Mr. Hensley?
One of the things in our wonderfully new upgraded library was the idea of having a coffee shop. Is that part of this, something to be considered in here in this layout of the new center area?
Yes, absolutely. As we look at the space, we want it to serve all the facilities around it, including the library, and that coffee shop is one thing that we've taken into consideration. We would look at probably a seating area that could serve both the general public and a coffee shop or whatever happens down at the library, and just generally be a better place for the public.
Mr. Dawson?
Yeah. Question about community partners. ORNL Federal Credit Union has been conducting summer sessions. It's a 4 or 5 bands performing there for the last 3 summers, I believe. And I didn't know if you had any conversation or wanted to involve ORNL Federal Credit Union in on this planning session, if you will, but possibly even if they'd like to contribute to it in any way. That might be something to pursue.
Yeah, we definitely would want to engage them in the process along with the public at large, but we'd like to have their input for sure. We are focused on the plaza area, but the spillover from the concerts does tend to lead up into that area.
Thank you, John.
Ms. Smith?
Yeah, do you have a crystal ball that tells you approximately when this construction might take place on converting the plaza?
I don't at this point. This contract is for conceptual design, and then once we accept a concept design, then we would look at a second contract to do actual construction drawings and estimates and that sort of thing, construction administration. It's typically a fairly long process. My guess would be best case scenario, we might break ground next spring. It might be FY26 by the time we're ready to really break ground. The other thing is we have to identify the funding for the construction. That's not currently budgeted.
Okay,
so
thanks.
That would have to be identified.
Any other questions for Mr. Hedrick? Seeing none, the motion is to approve, and we're on the board. Ayes 7, no nays, and the resolution is approved. Next resolution, Madam Clerk.
A resolution authorizing the city to contribute $1,500 to the Atomic Elks Lodge 1301 for funding their memorandum of understanding with East Tennessee Design Center for planning the next phase of their DOE-EM grant application.
Move to approve.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Heeman?
Yes, Mayor. At our March 26th council work session, we heard from Rose Weaver and Albert Beasley. They made a request for $59,660 in funding to do roof and electrical work on this building. Since then, we have looked at policies. We had a earlier policy adopted by City Council related to how we potentially fund nonprofits, and also have found out that the DOE Environmental Management Grant, the Community Capacity Building Grant that the Elks have applied for, they have been moved to the next round, so they're eligible for $1.5 million. And in that grant, there was a request for $500,000 for repairs to the building and another $1 million for a new structure on the site. So my recommendation is that we fund at this point, because there may be additional money, federal money that comes into this, that we would fund the MOU between the East Tennessee Design Center and the Atomics Elks Lodge. I will tell you that after a meeting on this subject with members of the Elks Lodge, I think that contract will be higher, that we will need to spend somewhere upwards of $5,000 is going to be my guess. I think the scope will need to be increased related to the new building and the footprint of parking and everything else on that lot. And this is all comes from the fact that we discovered that they're going to move through with a grant. So we think the scope needs to be increased. We're going to meet tomorrow and talk about that scope, but I think it will need to be increased.
All right, so are you suggesting that we approve an amount?
An amount up to $5,000.
Up to
I think,
5,000.
instead of $1,500. I think that scope is going to need to be increased. We'll meet and talk about it tomorrow with them, but that's my recommendation.
All right, just a second. All right, Mr. Dawson.
So, Mayor, I would make a motion to amend and approve up to $5,000 for the funding of this.
Moved and seconded. All right. Before we take comments from the audience, any other questions for Mr. Heeman or Ms. Rackard? All right. Somebody wish to be heard? Okay. You need to state your name and address, please.
Okay, this is Rose Weaver. I live at 142 Hendricks Drive. I guess I was a little kind of pulled to the side when I looked at what the actual resolution was going to be, because both me and Mr. Beasley, the project manager for the renovation, had made a presentation on what our immediate needs were because of the May convention that is taking place. And at that time, I do recall that there was to be some research and study on what past practice has been in terms of allocation for a not-for-profit, and I'm sure that we did not meet whatever the guidelines were, but it was our understanding that both council and the city manager would look to see what kind of discretionary funding or funds might be made available. The $5,000 is fine. I am working with Martin McBride and the DOE management on this contract. We're not for sure if we will even get any additional funds. We're competing with all of the DOE energy management installations throughout the United States, and we're in the second round. The monies that is indicated in the funds that has been indicated from the city manager is for the East Tennessee Design Center, which is more of a vision project for the Elks Lodge, and our immediate need is for repairs and for renovation of the building, not for a conceptual design, which we're going to be partnering with the East Tennessee Design Center, and that will be in the grant. The grant deadline is at the end of April. That is not the design part of it is not something that we have an immediate need for. Mr. Beasley.
I'm Albert Beasley, and I live at 205 Alder Lane here in the Ridge. When we met on March the 26th, I understood that council would consider appropriating $59,660, which I think which the city manager was present for that presentation. I understood that was going to be up for consideration, and I got bit excited about it, but the $5,000 was not something that I anticipated.
And the road and all of the other things, those are things that are in phase 2. Phase 1 of the renovation project is for repairs and for renovation. The DOE grant, emergency grant, that's something entirely different from what we communicated. This is something that is a little bit separate with the Elks, that is UCOR invited us to participate in, and we're in the second round, but you know how those grants go. You don't know when you're going to get approved for the fund. Our immediate need is renovation and repairs now, not for redesign or redevelopment in conception design in the future. And we know we'll work with East Tennessee Design Center, but that is not an immediate need that we have for a convention that will be coming up in 3 or 4 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Tanner?
Okay. Quick question. I guess I want to make sure I've got clarity. Mr. Heeman, you say you've been in conversation with citizens. I guess I'm caught off guard with them not knowing. I was thinking we were in conversation with them, so I'm trying to make sure.
We had a conversation about the grant once they discovered that they're moved to the second phase of the grant, and what would that look like, and that's where the planning grant comes in, is something that they can say as partnership with the city and that we're working on the long-range plan. That would be a good thing to include in the grant. Now, the total request to DOE was $500,000. The amount that was on the previous request was $255,446 to renovate the whole building. So, you know, the $500,000, if they received it, would cover. Now, I understand that they're talking about an immediate need versus a long-term need, but there's money in the DOE grant that covers this should they get it. It's $255,000 total renovation, and there's $500,000 for this building and repairs in the DOE grant. That was my point. And there's $1 million for a new structure.
Right, sure, and I'm familiar with that. I appreciate that. I guess what I was trying to make sure I reconcile is was Ms. Weaver and Mr. Beasley aware of this proposed, the recommendation before tonight?
I don't know that they were.
Okay, so they weren't aware, but you've been in conversations with the Elks about this? I guess you said, like, for example, there's a meeting tomorrow.
Yes.
And you said in conversation you're increasing this from $1,500 to $5,000.
Correct.
So I'm trying to reconcile the conversations you're having with what I'm hearing tonight.
That was a grant conversation today that was really led by Ms. Weaver and Mabry Duff and Martin McBride. So that was a grant conversation about the next phase of the grant writing that I sat in on. That's what that was.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
you said, I got you. So you sat in on that, and then
Correct.
Based on that,
Correct.
produced this.
Correct.
They didn't know that
Correct.
that conversation led to this.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Tinsley?
Yeah, this is a question for Ms. Reichert. Is there anything in the guidelines for charitable contributions that would prevent $59,000 from being the number? Like, for instance, are we dealing with a 501c6 as amended, like described in the highlights of your document?
So what I had referred to last time and found, I didn't remember that it went all the way back to 1979, 76, but is the City Council approved guidelines, which does have a time factor involved in it, so that money is considered in the budget. So I think part of what Mr. Heeman's concern is that there's no funding source. I don't want to speak for him, but I don't believe there's a funding source available for nonprofit contributions. in the current budget for '24. Now, if there's funding available somewhere and City Council were to choose to bypass the approved process and do it, that's one thing. I do think you open a door if you do that.
The other places I have been where we've funded nonprofits, it has been through a process that was opened up to all nonprofits. And that's not to say that this is not a good project. You know, it is a good project. They're all good projects, but, you know, in the past where I've done this, it's always been through a process like you adopted years ago, where if you're going to give money away to nonprofits, you set an amount, you receive applications from everyone so that it's a level playing field and everyone has an opportunity to apply, and then, you know, you have a committee that selects it. Now, that being said, it's your process. If you want to change that process, you can, but, you know, my recommendation is if you're going to give to nonprofits, to have that policy, open it up to all nonprofits, because it does, you know, you'll start getting requests at every meeting for projects. And if that's something you want to entertain, you can, but would not be my recommendation. Correct.
Ms. Smith?
Yeah, this was discussed at the Budget and Finance Committee meeting, and we did at that time review the policy on guidelines for disbursement to charitable nonprofit organizations. And as it happens, we've, in years I remember, we've done very, very little in the way of any kind of contributions to any nonprofits at all. And this policy clearly indicates that the budgeting of money that could be donated to nonprofits has to happen in advance, and it requires an advanced planning process. So doing this on a kind of an emergency basis didn't seem like a really good idea. And it's, you know, it's basically we look for nonprofits to plan ahead if they're going to make a request, and for us to plan ahead to say, yes, we're going to give money out. And neither of those happened in this case. So the grant, the relatively small grant to support the planning process for applying for the DOE grant is basically an investment in assisting the nonprofit in obtaining a larger grant, and seemed like a reasonable compromise given the circumstance. But we didn't feel that the precedent of giving an emergency grant to one nonprofit was a good business to get into. That we need to be consistent with our past policies.
Mr. Dodson.
So I've got a couple questions, and then I've got a statement. First, the question is, and I'm assuming the Friendship Bell and Peace Pavilion, as well as the Scarborough 85 Monument, one of the primary reasons that we look at funding those are that they both on city property. Is that what I'm assuming? So if this was on city property, we would look at it a different way. So that's my question, I guess.
That is correct, and I will also say, you know, even with those projects, they are things that are funded through. We also had a request to be the applicant on this for the DOE grant, which, you know, we've already been turned down for the same DOE grant, so that was not appropriate. But yes, that is a big difference in these, is that those two are on land that's owned by the city, and likewise those funds are flowing through other nonprofits, but it has been part of the annual budget process.
And I'll end with this statement, and I've said this a few times. This may warrant the creation of a board or committee that looks at things like art, history, and culture in our community, also nonprofit requests, and we have a set of bylaws that we go by, like other boards and commissions do in the city, because this is a growing request and it's a growing need in the city of Oak Ridge particularly, because again, this city was conceived in science, but we all in the audience know how important arts and culture and history are. And if there's any way that we can move forward with this, I think it would be a great addition to what we do as a city. And there's really a need for this, Mr. Heeman. So you can see tonight we could really use the guidance of that committee in how we would pursue this. Thank you for considering that.
Mr. Hammond.
A couple quick things. The first one is some of the follow-up. I know that I was in conversation with Dr. Watson before he retired, and he was looking at this dynamic where there is some pot of money designated for nonprofits to apply to all year. Given the nature of how nonprofits work, you don't always know what you're going to need until the middle of the year, and an opportunity presents itself, and then you end up applying throughout the year. So I would submit and suggest that this policy or this council, these guidelines are outdated relative to meeting the needs of nonprofit organizations. And it's not just a matter of rewriting a policy that requires nonprofits to meet a timeline that would rarely fit, especially December. That's the last time you really have, as a nonprofit, to be really looking at sort of applying for grants and those different kinds of things. So I would suggest that we explore as part of that, maybe in our funding, some allocated funding that a nonprofit can apply for. They can still follow the guidelines, but it's without this time restriction that pretty much eliminates any opportunity to do so.
I think the way to address that in a policy is that you would either set, we're going to do this 2 times a year, 4 times a year, because I will guarantee you that every time that you do it, that the request will be at least 4 or 5 times the amount that you have received. So you can divide it up into sections, but there will be more requests than you will have the ability to fulfill.
Correct. And I put 2 things on that. The first one is designating the funds, because I guess what I'm hearing is that even if we wanted to do it, there's no funding space or source. And so if we broke it up to 2 or 3 to 4 or 5, there would still need to be some designated amount. And I also would suggest, and I believe that nonprofits are used to applying for funds where there's more applications than funding, but at least you got the opportunity, and you might be one of those funded organizations. So everybody may not get funded, but the nature of the beast is you know that's a part of the process, but at least you have the opportunity. And so I think that there's room, given the request today and given the many nonprofits that are operating in the city and are reaching out outside of the city for funding opportunities, there may be a room to, in good faith, as a city that they're in, say, hey, we value the work of our nonprofits. We're going to designate this amount, and you all can apply. Everybody won't get it, but here are the guidelines. You follow those, and here is our contribution to the nonprofits of the city.
Mr. Hensley?
Yeah, could I suggest, Mr. Heeman, that you include this in a work session? Because when I think about the organizations right along the lines with Reverend Hammond and Councilman Dodson, I think the organizations we have in this community are so unique in what they do for the community, in particular the Emory Valley Center, the Boys and Girls Club, the Elks Lodge that we're talking about here. So I would like to figure out a way to do just what Reverend Hammond is saying, is have a pot of money and a committee that can review that on an annual basis and do what we can.
Sure. And, that's why, in my opinion, this becomes part of the budget request, because during that, we're going to have to weigh it against everything else. We talked today, for instance, we're applying for funding for a recreation master plan, So those will be policy decisions that the board will have to make. Are we going to fund that this year? Are we going to wait? Are we going to fund more into nonprofits? In my opinion, it's all part of the budget, and where do all the pieces of the puzzle fit together, and what are those priorities? And if one of those priorities is we want to fund on a regular basis this much to support nonprofits, that's a policy decision. We'll write the policy for that.
Mr. Ham?
Just real quickly, I do want to thank you for
Sure.
identifying, recognizing that there was no funding available for this. You did put forth the effort to identify funding and then also offer up to $5,000, which is a significant amount of money. And so I at least want to acknowledge that and say that I appreciate that.
Sure.
Let me ask this question, Mr. Heeman, Ms. Rackard. The motion is to provide them $5,000 for the grant writing. That's the way the motion is at this point.
It is for the East Tennessee Design Center.
Not the grant writing, but the
planning.
plan.
Correct.
So, would you have any objections if that $5,000 was authorized that they could go ahead and use to help with the cost of their repairs?
That's up to you.
So I will amend the motion that the $5,000, if it's approved, they can apply toward the cost of the repairs to the building.
Second amendment.
Ms. Smith, I'm going to defer to you because I normally wouldn't do that without having had that go through the budget committee, but would that be?
The biggest question on that is whether that's legitimate for, what we're,
legitimate action for us to take.
Yeah,
All right,
if we're compensating for the cost of a particular activity that we thought was needed, and the organization decides to use it for something else, we would want accounting for it, right, which is written into this nonprofit policy that the city already has. But I guess, if an agreement is made that it can be used for a different purpose as long as the other activity continues forward, I guess that would be reasonable. I'm thinking out loud.
That's okay. I know.
I don't mean to be technical, but you do have one pending motion for an amendment on the floor that was motioned and seconded. So by your rules, that amendment needs to be addressed before any other future amendments are
You're right.
permitted,
You're exactly
or it needs
right.
to be withdrawn.
You're exactly right. All right. What? The maker of the amendment is Mr. Dotson.
As maker of the amendment, I will withdraw the $5,000 for the application for the grant, correct? Yeah.
The design.
Yeah.
For the design.
East Tennessee Design Center, yeah.
There was already an amendment on the floor. I missed that.
Mayor Pro Tem Dotson made an amendment to amend that amount up to $5,000, and you seconded that amendment. So if you're withdrawing it and your seconder is good, then that amendment will be removed from the floor, and then the mayor can make his amendment.
All right. So the maker of the First Amendment and Mr. Hensley, who seconded, have agreed to withdraw that amendment. My amendment is that the $5,000 be appropriated to help with the repairs for the Elks Lodge, subject to all necessary verification in terms of how the money's spent.
I second that.
Mr. Ham?
Just for clarity, to make sure I understand Councilwoman Smith's, what she wanted to make sure of is that she wanted to make sure that what were we funding initially? The MOU between the East Tennessee Design Center and the Atomic Elks Lodge, that's still funded. So is it in lieu of or
that's in
either
lieu
way?
of. In other words, my amendment would amend that recommendation from the city manager that the money be spent on the planning budget for the grant.
Okay.
my amendment that I made was to allow that $5,000 to be used for the repairs to the Elks Lodge.
Correct.
For the meeting.
Correct, and I'm following. I'm in agreement with that, but I wanted to make sure that at least, and if I misheard, that's why I'm making sure that Councilwoman Smith didn't say, "Hey, go to the repairs," as long as it doesn't doesn't adversely impact what they were looking to do with the MOU. Did I miss? So it doesn't matter if the MOU is funded or not. I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding what the finance chair. Okay. I'm good.
Mr. Johnson?
So I want to be clear as well, okay? First, I mean, we supported, with the proclamation tonight, the Elks Lodge and that week, and that's very important. On the same hand, I want to make sure that we have a level playing field, and I think we've talked about that tonight for anyone else, organizations, individuals that will come before council and request money for any project, rebuild, or anything like that, trying to be fair to everybody in our community. I think everybody on council would agree. So moving forward, we have to really look at that before we have, after this, lots of folks coming forward and asking for that. So I think that's really important. Yeah, I just had to say that.
Mr. Hensley?
Yeah, didn't we agree to put that on a council work session?
All right. So the resolution as amended would provide $5,000 to the Elks Club specifically for renovations to the building, subject to the verification requirements that are put forward by the city manager and the city attorney. Everyone? Okay. Mr. Gleason?
The concern isn't the amount. The concern is not $59,000. It's not $5,000. It's the precedent of an arbitrary process.
It is.
Dispersing those funds. So I know it's terrible to hear. It's not about what you guys are trying to accomplish. I think everybody up here is voicing support for that and wishes that there was some sort of a mechanism. So that's the concern I have. To everyone else's point, we've got a number of well-serving, public-facing charitable organizations in the city, and they have every right to show up here at the next council session and ask for their $5,000. So I appreciate the legal dance you're trying to do to target that money specifically towards some action that will help. An unfair question is that $5,000 puts the smallest dent possible in what you need to have ready in 3 weeks for that convention, correct? I mean, it's something. It's better than nothing, right? So, well, I think we all as individuals recognize that we're trying to help do a good thing. As an institution, you don't get to have that emotion. So, supporting this tonight is a human response, not an institutional one. So we'll deal with the ramifications of that.
Mr. Johnson?
I want to follow up and make sure that it's perfectly clear. We talked about working with the East Tennessee Design Center. Will the organization continue to pursue that after this, even if you don't receive funding from the city in order to make that happen? Please.
Ms. Weaver.
142 Hendricks Drive. The East Tennessee Design Center is part of a proposal that was submitted several years ago by one of the members of the Elks Lodge. They are currently in the submission that we submitted to DOE, and we are right now looking at partners. We're hoping that they will be one of our partners. We do not currently have a memorandum of understanding with them. I think tomorrow there's going to be a meeting to talk about the East Tennessee Design Center and what approach that we will take. So we will certainly there'll be a collaboration with them, and we will keep you all posted and informed on that, as well as the other members. But that is something that has not officially taken place as we are working on the grant. Yes.
That's the answer to my question.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, Randy, goes back to we need to update the policy. If the policy was in the 1970s, we need to certainly update the policy. 50 years is a long time to run off the same type of process. We need to identify the pool of money, whether we set it aside, whether it's a percentage of some sort or whatever, and open that up to all nonprofits. I understand that the Elks is in an emergency situation. They have a state convention that's coming to Oak Ridge, and they can't do this in the building in the shape that it's in right now. That's why in that meeting I'd asked during that meeting whether or not they had a plan B to help organize that, because I just don't know that if it's fast enough to get it done, whether they can generate the funds, pull the funds together and have the work done and have it done in time for their convention. So, but you have to give, from a city's point of view, we have to give all nonprofits that are operating within the city a chance to apply for, and basically it's a grant. Basically what we're going to try to build here is that if everybody has the desire to do that, is to build some type of grant, whether it's a yearly grant or whether it's something that we pull money together out of each budget cycle to do, and allow all nonprofits to apply for it. Like Derek said, you may have enough money in that grant one year to fund 3 projects, or you might have enough money to fund 7 projects. You don't know. Or it might be 1 project. You just don't know. And so whether we give them $5,000 for design work or we give them $5,000 for emergency repair work, we are just, like I said, be ready, because the audience will be filled with nonprofits asking, because every one of them have something going on that is very passionate. They're very passionate about their particular issue, and rightfully so. Needed revenue. All of them need revenue sources. And we have to be very careful from a city's point of view as far as funding that revenue source.
Yeah, one of the things I cleared probably a month ago was Mr. Heeman, and I suggested to Ms. Weaver that she contact Ray Evans. You might find Ray is very experienced with historic buildings in the community and dealing with the city. You might find that you get as much out of Ray Evans as you do out of the East Tennessee Design Center.
Okay, we can't go back and forth now.
Yeah, but anyway, that's just wanted to remind you that the resource is out there waiting to do something.
Yeah, my preference on this, reason for making distinctions, is that I can see a public purpose for the city in assisting a deserving local organization in securing a grant.
Action at the time of presentation, because in most cases, the council and the staff will be prepared to respond effectively. However, I may answer a question or direct the city manager to do so, or direct the city manager to work with the citizen to effect resolution of the matter. Statements that are purely political in nature will not be allowed, such as campaign speeches or announcements of candidacy for office, nor will announcements of the civic or social event that is unrelated to city business. Is there any citizen wishing to address council? Yes, ma'am. Come forward and state your name and address.
Good Good evening. Good to see you guys again this month. I am Shayla Wilson, Executive Director at ASAP of Anderson, 131 South Charles G. Super Boulevard in Clinton. With me today, I have our ropes coordinator. She was hired back in December, but she has hit the ground running, and so we just had the opportunity to bring her and introduce her to you all today. So I will let her introduce herself.
Good evening. Thank you all for having me. My name is Christy McCaleb. As Shayla mentioned, I'm a Regional Overdose Prevention Specialist with the state of Tennessee. I'm granted through a state opioid response grant. So my job is to go in the community, educate the community on the trends of the opioid crisis that we're in, where it began, also offer naloxone in our community to individuals and agencies who would be needing of that. We also do what's called a Tennessee Save a Life training. Shows current trends specific to every county that I serve. I serve 8 counties, Anderson being one of those. So I just wanted to come and introduce myself.
Okay, so if you will, slow down just a little bit. State your name, your title, and your address one more time.
Yes, sir. Christy McCaleb, Regional Overdose Prevention Specialist.
Right.
My personal address is 174 Barber Road in Coreyton, Tennessee, 37721.
And we are glad you're here. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address council? Seeing none, the next order of business, elections, appointments, announcements, and scheduling. Seeing none, council requests for new business items of future briefings. I think we've covered that, and you have your direction. Okay, city manager's report. Anything additional?
Real quickly, I want to thank staff and those of you that could participate in the send-off for Mr. Suggs. It was a beautiful event. He certainly had an impact, a lifetime impact on this organization, and it was a beautiful send-off. So thank you to all that were involved in that. We did have, or we are to the point of around 70 applications for that position. We will start interviewing next week. And just finally, I wanted to say thanks to you all for the input into the budget process that we received today. It was very good, healthy discussion on where you see the future of this city. And our intent is to deliver a budget that helps fulfill what you have talked about today. So thank you so much for that.
Ms. Racker, do you have a report? All right. Having concluded our business for the evening, I adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.